Hey YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for June 14th through 20th. This week I read 4 books, I watched 4 shows, I watched 3 movies, and I listened to 1 book. First this week I finished Shout Out, which is a graphic novel put together by Toronto Comics, I believe it's called. And it's a graphic novel anthology of these very short queer stories that just brought me a lot of joy. I heard about this collection from Injeri over on Onyx Pages because she was reading it during Quarantine Pages and I had to pick it up for myself, and I was not disappointed. There were so many very super cute little short stories in this, and it just brought me a lot of happiness. It also had a foreword from Nalo Hopkinson, who is Injeri's favorite writer of all time, and after I've finished filming this video, I'm actually going to be watching an interview where Injeri interviews Nalo Hopkinson, which is very exciting. This anthology is actually available in print as well as PDF, so if you want to get your hands on it, you just have to go to their website and pay for the PDF and they'll send it right over to you. Which is how I got my hands on it, because 1, it's the cheaper option, and 2, I didn't have to wait for it to get here. I could read it immediately. The next book I finished this week was Each of Us a Desert by Oshiro. I believe this one comes out at the beginning of September, so this was an arc I got through NetGalley. I knew absolutely nothing about this book going into it. I just know that I really liked Anger is a Gift by Oshiro, saw that he wrote another book, went, I would like to read that, and I did. This is a magical realism book set in a small town in Mexico. It follows this girl who's the town's storyteller, and in this context she actually takes the stories from other people and returns them to the desert, and then they go up to the sun god Solace. She's been in this position for her village since she was a small child, and it is becoming a little bit much, and obviously things are going to happen to do with this position she has. Something I've come to realize over the years is even when I really enjoy the writing of a magical realism book, magical realism itself is just not my thing. So oftentimes while I'm reading it, my mind will wander, and that detracts from my overall enjoyment of reading the book. This is my own fault because I assumed based on Oshiro's previous book that this was going to be straight contemporary, and I probably should have looked into it before I read it. That being said, I did enjoy this book, but I'm not the type of person to love things that are magical realism, even though I want to. Something interesting about the writing style of this book is there are many words in this book that only appear in Spanish. They are never in English. And because I don't want to insult anyone with my piss poor Spanish skills, because I only took a semester of it back in high school, and let me tell you, I do not speak this language, I'm not going to sit here and name what they were. But for example, the words for stars and mountains and villages and different geographical locations, as well as words that I couldn't figure out exactly what they were but didn't want to stop to look them up, I was just able to figure out from the context of where they were in the sense that they were likely a place or a type of animal or that type of thing. There was also poetry incorporated into this book, which was a pretty important side plot that was going on, and those poems would appear in Spanish, but then they would be translated into English. I really enjoyed this incorporation of Spanish into the book, and not every book is for me, so I can't sit here and be like, I wish it was all in English, because no, that's not what the writer wanted to write, and not every book should cater to me. This book had strong themes of storytelling, pain, loss, hope, family, and obligations. There were also a ton of queer characters, and that was wonderful. Next I read King and the Dragonflies by Kacen Callender. This is a middle grade book about a boy named King whose older brother has recently passed away, and he's dealing with the pain and the grief from that, as well as his parents dealing with the pain and the grief from that. King really looked up to his older brother Khaled, and before Khaled passed away he told King that he should probably not associate with Sandy, this friend of his, who Khaled overheard coming out to him, because you don't want everybody else to think you're gay too. Unfortunately, King took this advice and stopped hanging out with Sandy, but at the same time is coming to realize that he is probably also gay. This book discusses a lot, especially for a middle grade book. It talks about grief, it talks about toxic masculinity, it talks about being queer and what that means, it talks about friendships and secrets, it talks about child abuse and systemic oppression, and it is a lot, and I highly recommend it. Next I read something that is my most disappointing read of the month, if not the year, probably the year, and that's the Stonewall Riot. You would guess based on the title that it would be about the Stonewall Riot that happened on June 28th of 1969, and you would be wrong. Although the Stonewall was mentioned, this was a mostly white and mostly gay view of history. It really just skimmed the surface of queer history, mostly through a white and gay lens, and I learned nothing about the riots. As an example of how this didn't tell the history of the riots whatsoever, it didn't even mention Marsha P. Johnson. But for some reason it was very excited that Sean Penn played Harvey Milk in a biopic. It was very excited that Helen went on to marry an unnamed on the page lesbian actress. And especially because I'm rewatching Scandal right now, I'm especially upset for Portia de Rossi for not even getting her name on the page. So yeah, this is not what I thought it would be, and it was not very intersectional, and I wouldn't recommend it. Speaking of Scandal, let's move into what I watched this week. I did watch a few more episodes of the 4th season of Scandal. We're still in the territory of stuff that I know, because I can't remember exactly where I left off. I have a feeling it was at the end of the 5th season, and I didn't leave off because I wanted to and I didn't want to come back. I just got to the end of what was available and forgot to keep watching when it became available to me. And because this is such a complex show with so many different characters and moving parts, I am really very much enjoying revisiting this and being like, oh yeah, this happens. And from time to time Megan will turn to me and be like, this is gonna happen, right? And I'll be like, I honestly don't remember. We also rewatched an episode of Sherlock, which was season 1, episode 3. If you've ever watched this show, every episode is basically a movie, and that's one of the things I love about the show. This is the episode in which we finally meet Moriarty. My long distance roommate and I also watched an episode of Luke Cage. We are enjoying it. It's going to be interesting to see how this season wraps up. Chad and I also watched a couple more episodes of The Walking Dead, and oh wow, we've done a time jump forward. So if you're familiar with the 9th season, you'll know exactly where we are. And let's just say I'm awaiting the return of a character, because it's gonna happen at some point and it's gonna be a shock to the people on the show. As for the movies I watched this week, we ticked off 3 movies that have been on the very long roommate written list of movies we should watch together. The first one was Burn After Reading, and I didn't know anything about this going into it, and it definitely had some twists that I didn't see coming, probably because we were talking over very important little hints that were in there. But one of the funniest standout moments for me was when Brad Pitt came into Frances McDormand's apartment, and I was just like, wait a second, I've seen him in that shirt before. I'm finally going to see the origin of this gif. We also watched Bridesmaids, which was a hell of a lot of fun. There are so many big name actors in this, and I really loved the interaction between Melissa McCarthy and the person playing this agent on the airplane. And then I loved it even more when Megan told me that that is her in real life husband. So many ridiculous things happen through this. I really loved coming to the end of this movie and realizing the groom had no speaking lines. This was really just about the bride and the bridesmaids, and that was great. We also watched the movie The Man from U.N.C.L.E, which is based on a TV series from my understanding. I had never seen either one of them before. This is a spy movie with lots of twists and turns and red herrings and double crosses and things like that. It's got the guy that plays the Witcher. It also has an actor named Armie Hammer, and we were like, that's a weird name, and we looked it up, and he's named after his grandfather, whose first name was Armand. So his name is literally Armand Hammer, like the toothpaste. And from Chad's deep dive on Wikipedia, I think he said that the grandfather also owned stock in that company, and it's just a weird thing I'm gonna have to actually read myself just to fully take in how weird that is. There were some standout moments in this movie. I especially liked the little picnic that Henry Cavill took himself on. If you've seen the movie, you know what that is. Finally, the book I listened to this week was Me and White Supremacy by Layla F. Saad. This book originated as a 28-day Instagram challenge with 28 different prompts where you would reflect on a different topic, such as white supremacy, and from there was formatted into this book. Upon finishing this book, I decided that I am going to reread this book. I'm rereading it all throughout July, and during this reread I'll be doing it 1 chapter per day and doing all of the journaling prompts that are in it, because when I listened to this I wasn't able to stop and write down what I was supposed to be writing down, but I found myself really wanting to do that work. So I've decided not only am I going to do a read-along of this from the 1st to the 28th of July, and if you'd like to follow along, the Twitter account for that is down below. It is at Do the Work Whites. I've also pledged to reread this book every single year because I feel like doing this work is very important. Like I said, this book is broken up into 28 different chapters. In the first week you go over the basics, such as what is white supremacy and how you've been contributing to it. In the second week you go into anti-blackness, racial stereotypes, and cultural appropriation. In the third week you go into allyship, and in the fourth week you go into power, relationships, and commitments. Like I said, after every chapter there are journaling prompts for you to reflect on that day's topic, and I am excited to do this work. I actually also picked this book as my read for the Fuckathon for Fuck White Supremacy. If you haven't seen that TBR, people have really enjoyed it because I used a fuck counter. So if you would like to see me swear a whole lot in one little video, I will will link that down below as well. I would also like to make it quite clear that this is not the only book I'm ever going to read on race and then just feel like I've done my part. I will be reading more of them. However, because of the format of this book, it does feel like something that I can revisit on a yearly basis. And I plan to do that until I die of old age. And that's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. Some of you have asked if there's a way to financially support me, so I recently set up a Ko-fi account, so that will be linked down below, as well as the link to my Amazon wishlist. I'm also going to link my PayPal in case that's a way that feels better to you than using a third-party site like Ko-fi, which uses PayPal. And if that is an option you would like to see in all of my video links, let me know down below and I'll do that from now on. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!